Welcome to MMO Grinder Browser-Based, where I take a look at browser-based games that are quick and simple in design. Today we'll be looking at a game that combines Metroidvania-styled exploration and action with roguelike and MMO gameplay from the makers of Realm of the Mad God. So let's take a look at Starbreak. Starbreak, developed by Crunchy Games, is currently up for vote in Steam Greenlight, but easily playable in your browser right now. Though it is considered to be in a beta stage at this moment, so expect some things to change from this point. Starbreak goes for a hand-drawn and animation style reminiscent of Flash, in a similar but far less detailed look compared to the Steam indie game 20XX. Animations are simple but have character, and you should be able to easily identify your characters and enemies as you play, provided the foreground in stages like Fungus Cave isn't actively fighting with your ability to see. The whole aesthetic goes for a fantasy sci-fi, especially in the characters, and stages vary greatly from forests and caves to high-tech facilities and futuristic cities under siege. It may take a while to understand what's dangerous when it comes to environmental hazards, but it's a pretty easy thing to remember once you've come across a few. Boss designs also tend to mesh this aesthetic, with the first boss looking like some near unidentifiable fusion of stone, insect, and machine. The game comes across very easy to run, unsurprisingly as it's a browser-based game, but even heavy amounts of enemies and particles on screen didn't give me any noticeable chug. Unfortunately, there's no client download as of yet, but hopefully we'll see something from this Steam Greenlight campaign. Hell, if Realm of the Mad God can get on there. Music, as you'll be hearing as the backing track here, is very bombastic and heavily sci-fi adventure influenced. Some of it low-key and atmospheric, especially in the home area. Unfortunately, it may be overpowered by the sound work in the game, and both the effects and the music itself are cranked to a rather loud volume by default, but it's easily adjustable from the options menu. It's a good listen though, and finding a soundtrack somewhere would be nice. Sound effects easily punctuate the action, and there's distinct noises for firing, hitting, and using certain actions or finding power-ups, though I would note that the health pickup noise seems oddly out of place. Compared with the rest of the game's sounds, it almost sounds like the notification ping of an instant messenger, and I'd almost instinctively check open chat windows to see if I'd gotten a new message every time I picked up a new health item. It's the only sore spot I have with this sound work. Maybe it's just my issue, I don't know. Starting out the game is as easy as pressing play, but note that if you don't press register and sign up with an email, you'll be forever known as a new Spark in the game. Registering saves you from having to worry about starting anew on another PC, though with a mechanic I'll mention that might not be that big of a deal. You'll start out in the tutorial with a class that won't exist in the main game until you're forced to choose your starting class, the Wildfire, a ranged gunner class. Along the way you'll be able to unlock other classes, or shells as this game calls them, known as the Duskwing, a lithe ninja-like melee class with speed and power, but little defense, a hulking melee bruiser called the Ironclad, and a robotic support class called the Fabricator, which can create smaller objects to attack enemies and create temporary platforms. Progress is made by collecting power-ups that'll raise your stats by a bit until full, and you'll need to find the next tier to progress even further. You'll also find equipment to place into slots, like weapons which can completely change how you have to attack enemies, secondary items unique to each class, special powers, and basic mobility and armor pieces. Like many multi-class games, collecting this loot is completely random, and you might fight through hell and back just to get a completely upgraded outfit for a different class. This leads us to another aspect of this game that will likely make or break it for you. It's a roguelike. A roguelike MMO. Just like Realm of the Mad God before it, if you die, that's it. You lose everything you had. Money, equipment, upgraded stats, everything you've earned on that character, with only two exceptions. The first exception being whatever you placed in your stash, a small chest in your home area. Anything you place in this stash will remain upon death, and it's not a terrible idea to place gear as a backup in case you die. Since, like Realm of the Mad God, gear has no level restriction, and you won't have to start off completely nerfed upon death. You can return to home at any time with the H key, but will take 10 seconds to do so in mission areas, and any damage that you take will interrupt it. It's a good idea to keep a mental track of how much health you're willing to live with, and know when to bail if you don't want to lose everything. The second exception is to keep any classes that you've unlocked, which happens upon mission completion. Fire Forest accesses Duskwing, Fungus Cave unlocks Ironclad, and Underground Base grants you Fabricator. These remain unlocked for one single reason. The only way to try out a new class is to kill your current one. This also makes the stash important in the sense that you might want to store gear for another class in preparation to change over. I will remark that I find the bosses interesting, if not pretty hard to deal with in some cases, especially the Fungus Cave, which contains an instant death mechanic in a very intense and difficult to maneuver boss fight. I can't help but feel that adding such a mechanic to a roguelike just feels cheap, especially considering Fungus Cave is a ridiculously unforgiving level from what's essentially the second one. The game also works remarkably well when controlling with a keyboard, or even the default controls of an Xbox 360 controllers. Keys are remappable though, and there's a bit of a learning curve navigating the wonky menu commands with a controller. Even as an MMO, there's no concept of grouping or raids, but each instance is fully open to anyone entering it, so there's possibilities of having just quite a few players joining you. This is a double-edged sword, as it's fantastic and even advisable to have a few players take on some of these challenges, and any loot that'll drop appears only to you, so you won't be taking anyone's items if you pick up every drop. But having tons of players on screen can make incoming attacks and hazards harder to notice, and plenty of players in the game tend to rush forward, clearing out most of the enemies, and gaining level rewards tends to be harder if you're not forcibly keeping up with that group. It's made worse by the fact that playing the game is the only way to gain loot, as player trading isn't available and items cannot be sold in any way. The devs say this is purposeful to avoid players' scams and price gouging, but it's frustrating when your run-ins with a full set of gear for a class that you have no intention of playing or have yet to unlock. Speaking of things the devs have said, there is currently no cash shop in this game. They're uncertain on exactly what they'll put into it, but they promise it won't be anything in the vein of class unlocks or Uber gear. Expect cosmetics at best, and maybe something to ease the roguelike difficulty at worst. Until then, there's nothing to pay for at all, and you get a tough, challenging game for completely free. While I think there's definitely room for some minor improvements, Starbreak is a solid title, and probably one of the best browser-based games that I've played in a while. And yeah, I'm aware I don't do this show that often, there's a reason. But if we can get more games like Starbreak, I'll definitely try to pull this format from the vaults a bit more often. Play this if anything I said interests you, especially if you're a fan of Metroidvania-style platformers and wanted to see a freely multiplayer twist. Since there's nothing to pay for as of yet, we can at least hope that Crunchy Games sticks to their promise of no paying for power. And they did well enough with Realm of the Mad Gods, so hopefully they'll provide some way to support them. However, if the roguelike lose everything when you die gameplay doesn't feel like something you'll enjoy, and I know even people that were currently enjoying the game got fed up hard when finding this out, it could very well be that one nail in the coffin that you'd need to keep this one off your must-play list. To play Starbreak, simply head over to starbreak.com and the game should load in pretty fast. Just remember to register first if you want a name displayed. Even with permadeath and no player trades in tow, I still say it's worth a shot. Getting started is painless, and if you're just trying it out, you'll have nothing to lose. Besides everything you were carrying when you're destroyed, of course.